Right folks, Alan Harrison again with another segment, another interview in the series Pipers'Persuasion. Today is Thursday 10th of June 2010 and we have on a very sunny warm day in June down at Doonfoot in Ayr the famous interviewee Angus Lawrie. Angus is a piper, a pipe major, a tutor, a composer, and he also has spent a great many years in making pipe bags, and we're going to discuss pipe bags, but we're also going to discuss other matters. And as is usual with my series, I've been working it chronologically, so we'll try and skim through maybe the earlier part of Angus's very interesting life and get to tell you, the audience, how he became a piper and who taught him and early influences on his piping career. Angus, over to you. Tell me all about yourself. Where were you born?
Well, born in Oban in 1930.
Good.
And we were taught, my brother and I were both taught with my father, who was taught with Willie Ross. He was taught by Willie Ross. Willie Ross used to tour the Highlands and he would land in Oban and have a tutorial there. He'd maybe go to Skye. But anyway, that's how my father was taught with Willie Ross. So we were well taught, both my brother and I. In 1955, I joined the Glasgow Police, and after my probationary period, the famous pipe major there, John MacDonald, Johnny Rodgin, he was a pipe major.
How long was he pipe major for?
Well, Johnny was, well, right up until 1958 anyway. I don't know when he joined the police, but he retired in 1958. Nothing to do with me joining the band, him retiring, by the way. But I can tell you a funny story. The first time we were on parade, it was a concert in the Alhambra.
Okay.
And he kept looking at me. I had just got my uniform and cleaned it all, washed it all. And he kept looking at me and he's stroking his chin. He said, "There's something not right about you, Lawrie. I don't know what it is, but there's something not right about you." And of course, it wasn't until I went home that I discovered the tassels of my sparring are hanging up in the pulley. He knew there was something wrong with the sparring. But that particular night was a howl because Johnny Johnson had his feather bonnet had knocked off and it had rolled across the stage, and he went forward to get his feather bonnet. And of course, when he went forward, the curtains closed. And of course, he couldn't get back. And of course, the audience were howling. Johnny was trying to get back to where the band was, but he couldn't find the curtains to open them. But eventually he managed it. That was funny.
You get lots of laughs in the band.
We did indeed. Angus MacDonald then, from North York, Angus took over as pipe major.
Aye, just at that time.
Yeah.
Now, he had to build up the band afresh with new talent at that time, because quite a few left.
Yes, he had to. And of course an awful lot of the old timers were retiring as well.
Yeah.
So he had a very difficult job.
A quick word on your cousin Ronnie. He joined the band and he was in roughly the same time as yourself. He
was in the band 2 years before me.
Right. And Ronnie's away now. Unfortunately.
I played at his funeral.
And who taught Ronnie? Just know what?
My father gave me his first lesson.
Right, okay. So
my father taught him first, and then from there on, he then came through to Glasgow. He was obsessed with piping, Ronnie.
Aye.
And he had the blind piper taught him.
Right.
Various other pipers taught him. But blind piper, and as far as I know, I think he went there for Peter Bain, lessons as well.
So he had Glasgow influences in this piping.
Yes, he was obsessed with piping, Ronnie.
How did you find Angus MacDonald as a pipe major?
Oh, he was a good pipe major. He was a
Aye.
very kind man. Very kind.
Yeah.
I remember when the bus was taken us to the World Champions in Inverness, it was a corporation bus and it broke down at Lawrie. And
I was on the bus.
I
remember that night.
remember Angus was phoning up various bus companies, and I brought him a dram. He was in the telephone booth. The sweat was pouring out of him, and he was
Aye.
phoning up all the bus. And I brought him in a dram, and he told me the problem. I said, "It's hopeless, Angus." He said, "I can't." I said, "Why don't you phone McBrain's?" And he looked at me. Now, I'm the last person I should have told Angus about McBrain's. And he looked at me and he says, "Why didn't I think of that?"
Yeah.
So he was interviewed later on,
Uh-huh.
and he said to them, "I used my brains, I phoned McBrain's." That was when they sent the bus down from Fort William,
Aye,
and
they
that
did.
was us. We made it to
We were
Inverness.
very, very late in Inverness that night.
Oh, yes.
Aye.
But that's how we managed it.
And we get beat the next day by 10th of a point
Yes.
by Muirheads.
Well, yes.
Uh-huh. Aye.
That was a
Famous
close
days.
call.
You had a lot of fun with the band. You retired to normal duties and then come back in. Ian McClellan was a pipe major in the latter half of your service, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
You got on
Very-
fine with Ian?
Ian was first class pipe major.
Yeah.
He was very ruthless,
Uh-huh.
and I remember in 1979, it shows you how ruthless Ian was. At Aberdeen, we went on to play, and it was pouring.
Uh-huh.
He turned round and he said, "Right, capes off."
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely bucketing down. I would took the capes off because the pipes at the back is inclined to slip on the
The
cape.
cape, that's right.
So capes off, and I remember Big Sid Spence got an awful cold,
Aye.
and we led into the selection with Dougie Gillespie, and
Aye.
we won it out the park.
There you are. Fantastic.
Yeah, I remember that well.
Aye. When did you leave the police pipe band? When did you retire? When did you retire?
I retired from the police in 1984.
Aye.
But I had spondylosis in my neck,
Mm-hmm.
and I left the band in just after 1983,
Okay.
and it was I took early retirement because I had to wear that, and I had to go for traction every so often.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, I had early retirement, so I left the band, and I was never in uniform again after 1983.
Aye.
I retired in 1984.
Yeah. I remember when you're talking about your health, you and Graham Richardson, way back in the 60s, went to a gym and you kept very fit and all the rest of it. Is that correct?
Oh yes,
Aye.
yes. Graham had a curriculum from. You forget to mention one thing about my career. I
What was
looked
that?
for nothing else but shinty, Alan. And
Ah!
I've won everything in shinty, Scotch
Uh-huh.
Cup medals, everything.
Great.
And in fact, Callum Finlayson founded the Glasgow Police shinty team. I
Uh-huh.
was first captain,
Uh-huh.
and I managed to get the nets. My father was the groundsman at Oban,
Uh-huh.
and he had old nets there, his stacks of old nets, and that set us off on the road. We were able to have our own nets for the competitions, and thanks to my father. And anyway, shinty was my life, and maybe my fingers suffered a little after that.
I remember the police pipe band, Glasgow police pipe band went up to Oban once when Ronnie was pipe major, and we played at a shinty game, and the puck, is it the puck you call
Oh
it?
no, it's a shinty ball.
Shinty ball
It's a
come
wee
right
two.
through the back window of the McBrain's bus. Do you remember that night?
No, I can't remember that. I remember us playing at the Worlds in Oban,
Uh-huh,
and we came in second again.
that's right.
And we'd been winning everything out of
Uh-huh.
that.
Aye,
And again, I think it was Muirheads that pipped us.
it was.
but he went round to our houses, my house, where my parents were, and we played a tune for the whole street, and we piped down the road, and marching down the road, we couldn't get anywhere. It was chock-a-block. So Ronnie said, single file and follow me. And we struck up, playing the 5, 6, 8, and we walked down Comby Street and on the pavement, and walked all the way down through all the crowds on the pavement in single file. He was quite a character, Ronnie.
Pipers now can't seem to do anything unless they've got music in front of them. And most of the tunes I learned when I was in the police pipe band, I didn't get any music. The 5, 6, 8s were a prime example. I joined the band and I said, what's this we're playing? And somebody just shouted from front, 5, 6, 8s. And I hadn't a clue. I put the pipes up and it was the camels were coming and all this sort of stuff.
My first parade was...
and you just to learn them on the walk, on the march, you know. You never ever saw music for it.
Yeah. But all the tunes that I got, that was thrown at me, 5, 6, 8s. Well, I didn't even know the rotation. But I knew them all. It wasn't a tune I didn't know at that age.
Yeah,
we played nearly every kind of tune.
And there's another occasion we played up in Newton Moor to play for Some Reel at night, and we asked to play reels, and I didn't know any reels. Says, well, in quarter an hour's time you'll have them all memorised because we'll play them all for a full 8 Some Reel.
You had to learn pretty quickly, but you're very right now, we never had any music.
Yeah.
Very few sheets of music in the early days. I think the most famous story was Graham and I on the Whirlpool Bridge. We had a free day, it was over in 1977, we had a free day, we were playing in Toronto. And Mike Sandy McPhee's wife was, she was going to visit a relative who was ill in Buffalo. So she said, I'll drop you off at Niagara. So we dropped off at Niagara Falls and we were having a coffee, and Graham said, oh, but it's walking over the bridge there. And that's another place we can say we've been in, it's America. We've been in America and we can walk back. So that's a good idea. Put a dime in the turnstile and went across. We didn't see any security people, customs or anything like that. Just put a dime and walked across, stamped our feet on the other side and started to walk back. And this guy from the customs on the American side, fellas, got passports? And he says, no, I said, we're just going back, we just wanted to come over and say we've been in America, and this way, fellas. And he wasn't very pleased at all. But the Cold War was at its height at the time, and unfortunately Graham, my good friend Graham, very Highland spoken, and he used to be mistaken for a Polish speaker. Because of his Highland accent. So he asked me my particulars, and I gave him my particulars, and then he said, all right, and he said, where are you from? And I said, Graham said, well, I'm from Skye. But the way Graham said, I'm from Skye, it's something like a red Indian saying, I'm from Skye. And I thought, I could see he wasn't very pleased, but I thought he was taking the mickey out of him. And he said, he's from the island. He's from the islands. I realised how serious, we both realised how serious this was. Because we didn't have passports or visa. I said, it's the Isle of Skye in Scotland he's from. So he looked at us and then we're all right. So he wrote out the paper and he very, very caustically said to us, and don't lose that bit of paper or you'll be in the bridge all bloody night. Halfway across there, Graham said to me, he said, have you got that bit of paper? I said, what bit of paper? Oh, Angus, we'll be on this bridge all night. Well, it was an awful job finding the paper, but I eventually found it in the very first pocket I looked at. But the ACC Binney, the Assistant Chief Constable Binney,
he was ACC crime.
And of course, he met us and he said, oh, what a lovely day I've had, boys. I said, they discovered I was a pilot during the war. And he said, I flew the plane away up north. And Graham said, you're lucky you're away up north and not away down south to bail us out. And he told them the story. So all the boys had a ceilidh then, and were all laughing at our predicament.
Aye.
But in the morning, I went down for my breakfast, Graham and I, And the first person we met was Benny coming out of the kitchen, the dining room. He said, "Good morning, and how are the illegal immigrants this morning?" But from then on, the story has grown somewhat.
Aye.
So every time Graham was asked after that, Graham would tell them to speak to John Wilson. You'll get the right story from John Wilson. Because John, being a good racketeer, he's got his own version of the story.
And Jimmy Watt's got another version as well, because he told me it a few weeks ago.
Oh, was he?
Well,
but that was
happy days.
It was quite serious. I never realised how serious it could have been, you know.
Yeah. And you got lots of good trips in Italy and places like that as well.
Well, when I run down, I think you were in the band, Alan, to
Aye.
Salerno, and
Yes.
Willie Sloan, he was
Secretary.
the secretary of the Pipe
Association.
Band Association.
Yeah.
Now Angus put me in with Willie. I
Uh-huh.
think maybe because I was one of the few teetotalers in the band at that time.
Aye.
But when I woke up in the morning, I'm looking across at Willie's bed, and underneath the bed I could see these two great big brogues. And they reminded me of a farmer I used to know, and been on the hills, all it were turned up. And I'm looking at these two big brogues, and that's Willie's brogues come into my head.
So that was a tune.
That was Willie's brogues, I wrote that down, and we played that many times in the band. It was quite a successful tune.
Aye.
But that was where it came from. It was Willie.
Could you tell
Willie's
could
brogues.
you tell the viewers what kind of tune it was?
It was a hornpipe,
Hornpipe.
a 4-part hornpipe.
4-part hornpipe.
I'll
There you
refrain from singing it.
So which takes us quite neatly on to your composing. Have you been composing all your life, or is it something you took?
It just came out of the blue.
Aye.
I'd be on a school crossing, taking
Mhm.
kids across the school, and a tune would come into my head, and I would write it down in my official notebook, because I knew I would lose it. And if you don't do that, it never comes back.
Aye.
I would maybe take the dog out for a walk, and halfway away from the house, the tune would come into my head. I would run back for a bit of paper. But when it comes into my head, and if I don't write it down, I've lost it. And it's still that way. I would lose it if I don't write it down.
Jimmy Watt said he lost many a tune at a set of traffic lights.
Well, I can appreciate that.
So
The tattoo,
a lot.
by the tattoo,
Mhm.
that there was a memorable tune.
Yeah.
And it came about because we'd been in Hawick in 1976, and because we were on first, we were on at the tattoo, and we had to be back for the tattoo.
Mhm.
They let us go on first. Now nobody wants to be first, so there was no objection from anybody. The band that was on first is usually it's up against it.
They're up
you know,
against it,
you
yeah.
know. But anyway,
So that was at the World Pipe Band Championships.
that's in Hawick in 1976. So back to the drum major stayed behind to get the results.
Yes,
And Big George, I forget the second name.
Seaman.
Big George.
Is it Seaman or it doesn't matter.
But anyway, a nice big guy anyway.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, when we were playing in the second half of the concert, we were walking down to finish, and the curtains drew back, and the Danish police and the Swedish police band orchestras, they were there clapping us off, because word had just come through, it just came through, we had won, and it was announced we were the world champions. And it was such a happy time. That's how I composed the tattoo.
Right.
It was such a happy wee tune.
And that was the first occasion that the band had won the World Championship for many a year, and indeed it was the first time that Ian McLeod won his Pipe Major.
76.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
Aye.
We'd been up against it, we'd try new chanters.
Any other
when
tunes
Ian
that-
took over, he was trying new
Yeah.
chanters. He knew exactly what he wanted,
Yeah.
and he got what he wanted.
Exactly. What other tunes can you recall that are famous stories about other tunes?
Well, an old toasty. Old Toasty was my...
Old Toasty.
That's Ronnie's father. But
Right.
Ronnie's father was... He was just a dainty little man, and when he could dance the hornpipe. The sailor's hornpipe in particular, he used to give concerts, and very, very light and nimble on his feet. And of course, when I wrote the tune, I just thought of Aggie, and that was his nickname, my Uncle Angus, and that was his nickname, Old Toasty.
That's amazing, yeah.
So that's how he got that tune. That was a hornpipe as well.
And you wrote 2 or 3/4s as well, didn't you?
Yes, I've written 2/4s, 3/4s, I've written them all, 10, 12, 8s.
And indeed, you've won prizes for your compositions.
I won one 2 years ago, Alan.
Aye.
That was the Piping College,
The College of Piping.
and it was for a 2/4 march. And I remember it was 4, 3, 2, 1
Okay.
was the order of the prize given.
Right.
And this lady that, and I was going for my golden wedding
A golden wedding,
after a fortnight after the competition.
Okay.
And my family were taking me to Bruges, of all places. So the £500 I won, this lady, she had a second, and she said when she got her money, a lovely piper, she would play my cousin Ronnie's pipes, and she just bought from Ronnie's widow. And she said, I'm donating this cheque to the College of Piping. And I'm thinking there, well, I knew I'd won it by this time, because I was there as a prize winner.
Right.
So when I got my cheque, I thought, this is a tough act to follow. But I felt I had to say something, and I said, I'm donating this cheque to the restaurants in Bruges. My family are taking me there for the golden wedding.
Great. Fantastic.
So that's where it went.
That's excellent.
But it was a lovely night, and I was pleased with the tune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian McClellan did play a lot of your tunes though during
He did, yes,
his
he
time.
did.
He was fortunate in having good composers like yourself and Jimmy Wark and that
That's
sort of
right.
thing in the band. you
But
know.
we were desperate to help as much as possible,
Yeah.
you know.
Moving on from there, you left the police, you became involved in other pipe bands.
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
I had a deputation from the Johnson boys. It was coming up for the War Memorial time, you know,
Yeah.
and they were wanting me to come down and set the band up for them.
Yes.
And from there on, I just joined the band. I set the band up for them, and I became involved in them. I became pipe major of them.
Okay.
So we had a nice wee, we won quite a nice wee competition too.
Terrific.
An indoors competition, a nice trophy, and the band that was second was the Open Pipe Band.
Excellent.
So anyway, I then joined again I was approached to see if I would take over as pipe major from Malky.
Malcolm Mackenzie.
Malcolm Mackenzie.
At
And,
Red
It
Hackle.
was a Britoil. It was a Britoil pipe band, and
Britoil.
I took over as pipe major there. And I think it was the second year where we won the competition, first grade competition in Rossi.
Great.
So, and after that, of course, Britoil disbanded. The company just disappeared altogether, so we had no sponsor. So that was it. That was the end of that. The reason I became a pipe bag maker is that Ian McLennan phoned me up and asked me if I'd go to Ireland to judge a pipe band competition. He was supposed to do it, but the band had an engagement.
Okay.
And this be about 1986.
Right.
So I was put up by one of the committee members, it was the St. Field Pipe Band, Sammy Boys.
Okay.
And Sammy in his spare time sewed pipe bags. So he said, Angus, now that you've retired, why don't you start a wee business up? I'll show you how to make the bags. So Sammy took me up to his loft and showed me how to make the pipe bags, and I got hooked. And 2 years later, I was the biggest supplier in the UK to the trade.
My goodness.
And I was working myself to death, Alan. I can tell you, I was busy.
How many bags were you turning out at that time?
Well, at that time, I could, it all depended. If it was sheepskin, sheepskin took a lot of work. You'd be all day slogging to make 3 sheepskin bags.
Aye. Is it because the skin's tougher to work with?
Well, it's you have to be very careful cutting out a sheepskin bag. And there was, in these days, sheepskin, and that's another thing that flowed the sheepskin business. There's Chernobyl. I started up about the same time as I started my business. And we were getting the sheepskin from Norway.
Okay.
And because of the fallout, they stopped importing it from Norway. So we were starting to get inferior quality bags.
Excuse me, why did they stop?
The fallout was
is it because of radioactive bags or
that's
something?
right, there's radioactive fallout in Norway. And they stopped the production there. And that was quite serious, Alan.
So they lost a lot of sheep, really?
Well, they lost that side of it. They wouldn't take any sheepskin from Norway at that time because of the fallout.
So where did you get your bag?
We got it from Butterfield Leather Company, but it wasn't the same quality.
And where did they get them
They
from?
got them from the Feldmongers in Yorkshire.
Aye, okay.
So they were, and of course the sheep they were getting not as big as the Norwegian sheep, and the skins were not as good and very inferior in quality.
Would you explain to them also about barbed wire and sheep and sheepskin and stuff like that? The damage it can do.
Well, the biggest damage that was done with sheepskin was that they were inoculating the sheep, and the inoculation mark, it was right in the most important part. It would be right where your blow stick was. So I had to make a template with the hole cut out so I could place it over the inoculation hole, and make sure that it was marked when you were selling it. You wouldn't see any, you can't see it of course, on the outside. And you would mark it so that they would make sure that that's where the blow stick was going to go.
You were cutting
because
that
it's
bit
right,
out. Yeah.
it's right where the hole was.
That's interesting, yeah.
So, but there was about £25 for an inoculation, and I think it was quite costly to inoculate sheep, and I think they dispensed with that.
Right.
So there was a while there we weren't getting any inoculation marks at all because it was quite expensive to inoculate sheep, and they didn't bother inoculating them.
How did you find working with the hide?
The hide, I loved working with the hide. It was a doddle. I could maybe sew 6 bags a day.
So explain precisely for again the viewers what animal the hide comes from.
Well, it comes from the cow.
Because a lot of folk think peas come in a tin, you know.
It's when you talk about the elk hide bag, the elk hide was a great seller, but it's not elk. It's just cowhide and a treatment that they were allowed to call elk. And because I asked them about that, and I was quite intrigued to think about the elk being used, and I was told no, it's a treatment, and we were allowed to call it elk. But this, for example, is Johnny Weatherson's, one of Johnny Weatherson's products. Johnny was a great man for using the black sheepskin.
I've never seen the black sheepskin.
Well, this is the black sheepskin. It's just a treatment, and this is it's the same treatment as the leather gets. It's not like the normal sheepskin bag, which is absorbing all the moisture. This doesn't absorb the moisture. It's had a treatment like the leather gets. Now what we do is we bring this over when you're starting to sew. It's cut out. Put a roller here to get the centre. And then you put a ½ inch of glue all the way around here. Then you would get your fillet. Now this fillet's got to go in the bag. You mustn't ever sew a bag without the fillet. You would start there, put the fillet all the way around.
That's it, glued
bring
on.
it back to it's glued, and then you have it like that. You do the same here, glue all this round, turn it over, glue it again, and you hear it. This is the welt that goes on. So that'll be glued as well, and that's
Okay.
glued. And then you bring it together, and this is the finished article here. That's the bag.
Right.
And when that's all done, you get a wee protractor and come round here and make a line. Place it in your clamps on the vise and start to sew following that line. And that's how you do it. It's in a good vise, and the most important part about it is the clamps are only about 6 inches apart. It must be really firm. If it's floppy, you'll break your awl. It has to be rigid.
Aye.
So that's the bag, that's how it's done.
And you're forcing all through by hand, and
You're forcing it through by hand.
and you're using what kind of is it hemp thread? What do you use?
It's just ordinary thread, natural thread, and you have to beeswax it
Right.
or black wax it. You
Okay.
know, I use the beeswax for the tip because it makes it. It's more unlikely to come off the column if you use beeswax.
So many strands of
There's
the normal
there's
thread.
8 on each needle.
Okay.
8 in each needle. And
Right.
if you try and work it with 6, you'll snap it.
Aye.
It's been done quite
Aye.
easily.
Aye.
So that's why if I arrived at 8, you won't snap 8.
And another
that's
stupid
it.
question here. See, you've got this. Is it got to be a continuous thread, or can you?
Oh, I don't know, it's all one thread. It must be continuous.
Aye.
So
So.
if you try and change it halfway,
Aye. It's maybe a possible leak there.
no, you won't leak, but it'll look odd. The way you would do it, you have to go back a couple of stitches
Yeah.
and then carry on.
Yes.
But you can do that and it'll be okay. But it wouldn't look so nice.
It doesn't look so
No.
professional.
No, no. So it's a one.
Right. Okay.
It's 100 inches, 8 feet 4. 8 feet 4 of thread.
Thread. My goodness. And that's
Oh,
what size of bag is that?
That one there is an 11-inch bag.
That's a standard 11-inch bag.
The standard bag is 10.5 inches.
10 and a half. Okay.
That's the size that
And
I
a
would
small's
play.
10. Yeah?
You would use this one, Alan. I use a 9. I use.
Oh, fun enough. I'm into the small bags these days.
Well,
the 10
John
inch.
Burgess, I used to supply John, and it was a 10.5 inch bag he used to take. And of course, his pupils would take a 10-inch bag. And having played the bag with his pupils, John found that bag was just perfect for him. And so he started taking a 10-inch bag.
I quite like the 10-inch myself.
Yeah.
It frees up the wrists and the
Yes, well,
hands.
that's right. It does.
Now, another comment, please, about the properties of sheepskin and the properties of hide, leather, regarding throwing off the moisture onto the reeds.
Well, I can tell you from experience, Alan, you could stand outside on a cold day, piping continuously, people going on to a boat or into the church. You could play for an hour with a sheepskin bag.
Right.
And the reeds would be dry.
Correct.
But you'll play for half an hour with a hide bag and they're soaking wet.
Aye.
Without a doubt, they'll be
Yeah.
soaking wet. No matter how-
Irrespective of
you
seasoning
can
or
be a
anything
dry-
else.
You can be a dry blower, and all
Yeah.
the people say a dry blower. It doesn't, I'm not a wet blower, and I can tell you, blowing continuously for half an hour on a cold day, your reeds are soaking wet.
I had that experience.
But not with the sheepskin.
I had
The
that
sheepskin will
experience
absorb.
at Cowell one year. Played 57th on the Pembroke, and I'd been blowing the pipes all day off and on with a hide bag, a new hide bag, and the pipes were just a mess by the time it went on.
Do you remember 1977 we played, we never had a sound like it. It was a lovely hot day,
Aye.
and we had a sound that nobody else has ever heard. But it was the sheepskin pipe bag.
Aye.
And you could hear all the way around there, and the hair on the back of my neck was standing, and everybody else was telling me the same. Because they knew if anybody made a mistake, you could hear it, you would scream out through
Of
the
course it
band.
would, yeah.
It was an absolute, I've never heard a sound like that
And
since.
the properties, again, for the listener, of the sheepskin bag throws out the sound in the top hand, whereas the Gore-Tex buries the sound in the top hand. Is that correct?
that it's a different sound from a.
Yeah.
It's a drone sound as well.
Yeah.
It's a drone.
It's a sound box, really, isn't it?
The whole sound is different with a sheepskin bag.
Yeah.
Your drone sound and your chanter sound is different.
Yeah.
With the sheepskin.
Aye, absolutely. What did you use for seasoning in your early days?
Well, I used to use the white of an egg and some sugar
Yeah.
and just rub it into the bag.
Okay.
That's what we use.
And that was before they brought out the proprietary
Before it was
stuff.
brought out
Robertson's or Hardy's or whatever it was, yeah. Aye.
you mustn't mention commercial stuff.
Oh, why not?
But then
It's our programme, we can talk about what we like.
I could say that the eggs I used were free range eggs.
Your pipe bags, did you send them all over the world or what?
Yes, all over the world. Australia, Canada,
Yeah.
America.
Have you showed anybody
Even to
else
Denmark.
how to make the bags? Say, have you,
Yes, I've had people here showing them how to make them.
are
a
they
few
successful in business now?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And talking about people, showing people piping things, you were a teacher yourself, weren't you? You taught youngsters and...
Yeah, I did taught various people.
Aye. You enjoy that?
Yes and no. Because it was interfering with my other work.
Aye,
I'd be
that's
working all day and then maybe taking a couple of guys at night
Aye, I know.
and then teaching them, you know.
It's difficult, yeah.
But,
So, are there any other wee stories you can recall at this particular moment in time?
I don't think so.
Right.
I can't think of anything really funny, Alan. Except learning you a bad word when we're going down to Salerno. It's a bad Italian word which I was told, and I didn't really know it was a bad Italian word.
Aye. But we had a lot of good times, a lot of musical times on the band bus. It was my memory that every time we went to places and every time we come back, there was always a set of pipes in the go in the band bus.
Yes, there was, and invariably it was mine.
Aye.
But I remember a funny thing you were talking about there. I remember Big Ronnie, and we had a big urn of soup, and you probably remember it yourself, a big urn of soup in the bus. And somebody had taken the lid off and helped himself to a cup of the soup, and Big Ronnie was putting things here and there, and of course he nudged, but he's still in McMurchie.
Right.
Still hadn't got the butt end and he pooped over the soup. That was on the band bus.
Oh, aye. And of course we had lots of sort of groupies in the band bus at that time. Folk that came with the band everywhere, all the competitions.
We had the regular followers. Ina Mackenzie.
Ina Mackenzie.
Ronnie wrote a tune for Ina, a lovely hornpipe for Ina.
Aye, terrific tune.
Yeah.
In fact, it was my recollection that Ina had actually heard Ronnie playing that up the front of the bus, and Ina shouting at the back of the bus, "What do you call that, Ronnie?" And I don't have my name for it yet. I just call it Ina Mackenzie.
That'd be like it. That'd be like the thing. The band was over in Nova Scotia one year. I wasn't in the band at the time, but they'd gone over to Nova Scotia. And they were being looked after by the Simon Fraser. And of course, my friend Graham had a reputation in the band as being called the Prophet of Doom, because he used to say, "Well, it won't be long now, boys, before we know we've got nothing." Some words to that effect. So, of course, somebody told the lads in the Simon Fraser about Graham's nickname. So one came up to him when they were having the wee session there. "I believe, Graham, that they call you the Prophet of Doom." Now, Graham was most annoyed at this being leaked out that that was his nickname. And he turned round to the fellow and says, "Yes, And boy, have I got news for you. You're on first at the Worlds this year. And everybody's burst out laughing. They were on first at the Worlds. And of course, the cameras had followed the band all over, and they heard the story.
Aye.
And Graham was interviewed in television. And I saw the interview myself on television, it was brilliant.
Aye.
And they brought this up. I believe you told them that they'd be on first. Yes, and I can assure you there was no un-American activities. That was Graham's reply. It was so funny that he won, they were on first.
It was a funny man. It really was.
That was a good laugh, Graham.
And the two used to do a wee double act in a Cayley after the band concerts, remember?
Oh gosh, aye. Maggie Ann from Clonachnabroch once said to herself, I would take it from there.
Aye. Oh, terrific. Angus, we've through your life very short shrift and very quickly, but I think the listeners, viewers have got a very succinct idea about your life in piping, and I hope that they take something from your comments on bag making. It appears to be a very, very strenuous exercise making a pipe bag, and very good. So thanks very much for your wee chat with us today.
Nice to meet you, Alan.
Thanks. And you talk away for you.
Right, I've got the bag's all marked out here, Alan.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just putting the clamps.
Uh-huh. And this is preparatory to sewing.
This is getting me ready for sewing.
Right. That's it in the vise. Okay.
In the vise.
I'm going to put clamps on as well.
So if you don't put the clamps on, you won't sew.
Ah.
This has got to be very, very firm.
Uh-huh.
Now to save time, I've already got 4 holes there, but
Okay.
you start just about a centimetre up and get your holes and following the line.
Uh-huh.
And that, as you can see, is quite...
Yeah.
Now, when you start sewing, it's important to get good gloves on, because this would cut your hands in two. I've got my tie already.
Uh-huh.
Now there's 8 needles, there are eight threads in each needle, and you can see there's only 2 on that one.
Uh-huh.
There's only 2 in the needle there, but
Aye.
it's staggered all the way up, 3 inches apart, and it's frayed out.
Ah.
So that'll go
so
through.
that gives you the start.
That's to get you through there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because you've come through on the right, if you're a right-handed person, you make the hole on the right, right?
Okay.
So that hole there is bigger than the one on the left.
Yes.
So you come through from the one on the left first,
Uh-huh.
and then put this one in. Now, this is important.
That goes in the same hole.
When I'm going to shove this through,
Uh-huh.
I'm actually pulling that back as well. Now if I don't do that, it'll go through the thread. So you have to make sure that you're pulling it back.
Uh-huh.
Now, I'm going to start pulling on it.
Right, okay.
I need a bit of room here. Okay?
Yeah, my goodness.
There's a knot in this, and a wee knot for hanging up the bag when you're seasoning it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And you get that in the centre here, and then pull that there tight, and then you have to pull that pretty tight, tight as you can. Now, in the same hole again, this is the only time you
That's
do
it,
this.
number 1 hole.
This is the number 1 hole. You do another wee help make it a bit bigger. Go through the same hole. That's it there. Now this one has to come across. Now this is the first stitch, and this is, you've got to do this. It's the very start of it. And when you're pulling the needle through, for goodness sake, don't pull it by the needle, because that'll just come up, because it's very, very thin there.
Aye.
So that's your thread. Pull it
You
up.
pull the thread.
Pull it up. And that's your first stitch. And that got it really tight.
That's
So that
amazing.
won't leak. And then carry on. In with the left one, the one in the small hole. Right. And that's it. So on and so forth. Just go right along there.
Right through.
Just doing that. And that's
Absolutely
about all you need
tremendous, yeah.
to show you, Alan. That's how it's
First
done.
class.
At the very end, you just tie it at the nose at the very end, come to the end.
Yes.
And it's not a knot, you don't put a knot in it, just tie it at the nose, it won't come
Yeah,
apart.
yeah.
And that's it.
Absolutely
That's the
tremendous, yeah. That's your bag, eh?
That's the bag.